Of course. Thank you for coming on. We're super excited to pick your brain there.
See some funny people jumping in from the Instagram Live right now. Shout out to J-Raw. I think I saw Tommy in there. A couple characters. You guys are going to get some weird follows.
Perfect. Amazing, amazing. All righty. What up, Instagram? What up, podcast, and anywhere else you guys are watching? We're here with Ben Lyons today on Filmmakers Uncut. It's going to be an exciting episode. We're super excited to have Ben on here. Ben, if you could run a small bio for us and tell everyone here listening and live who you are, what you're about, we can go from there.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on the show. I am a film producer, a correspondent, work in the world of sports media. I'm a diehard Knicks fan. I'm a voter. And I'm very appreciative for you guys taking some time for your day, talk about the industry and what's going on.
Of course. Yeah, we definitely wanted to just kind of hop on here.
What's going on with audio? Let's get the tech right first, because people are saying that they can't hear and something's wrong, or what do we need to do on my end? Because I want to make sure this is a good audio experience for everyone here.
Of course.
Mbot saying that there's an audio thing in the thing.
It might, because we have the other platform going.
Is your Instagram, is the volume up on your Instagram?
Why don't I log off the computer and we'll do it just on Instagram Live, I guess? I don't know. Oh, somebody's saying it's their audio now, E-Dog. When E-Dog, the audio expert, is on top of things, then I guess we're in good hands here. Shout out to E-Dog.
Let's see here.
You can tell you're a specialist when you're kind of interacting with all the people who are hopping on.
Do you hear any feedback on your end through our end?
It's a little static. How about?
It might be the double in microphone.
Okay. Show this one here. Cool. Let me unplug here. Ben, let's do a check right now on this end. I'm just going to take off my microphone. We haven't had this problem before.
Oh, hey, I'm a champion. Thank you. Look at that. One of one.
All right, we'll go like this. I think this should be good. Maybe we had two microphones and it was echoing there. So we'll just head out with one microphone. If you can unmute yourself on the computer version and then mute the Instagram version, just because for our podcast, we take the one version.
All right. I don't really know how to mute the Instagram version, guys.
Just turn down the volume there. You don't have to actually mute yourself.
All right. It's all the way down. There it is.
Perfect. Guys, if you hear any echo, just let us know. If that becomes a problem, we'll probably just hop off Instagram on this end. Okay. Cool. So Ben, let's get into some questions here. If you could kind of go a little bit more in depth into your bio, because I know you've done a lot through your whole career. We'd love to know a little bit more about what you've done in the film industry, and I know you've done some hosting as well. We'd love to hear a little bit more about that.
Well, yeah, I like to say that I'm a real fan with real access. I work at the intersection of sports, film, and culture. I got my big break as a correspondent for the E! Channel back in 2006. However, my love of film and understanding the business, love of the business of making television and media comes from my family. My dad's a film critic in New York, still works to this day. My grandfather before him worked as a columnist for the New York Post from 1934 to 74, covering nightlife in New York. So I grew up in the family business of supporting artists, covering culture, documenting, art through media. So I got the opportunity when I was 24, 25 to move to LA, get this all access pass to Hollywood and interview my heroes and travel the world and cover film and cover award shows. And that led to a producing career. And then through a phone call to ESPN, it led to a career in sports media as well. But I always go back to that feeling of being a real fan with real access and trying to bring my passion, understanding of the business to whatever it is I'm hosting or producing or covering or talking about.
That's amazing, my man. That's super cool. And I'm not sure how old you are right now, but how long were you doing it before you got like your big break, you know, that moment where you're like, I've made it now?
Well, again, you know, growing up in the business, I always was around it, always having these conversations. I remember going to press screenings with my dad and some of the other big critics of the day. The late Joel Siegel was someone I really enjoyed spending time with growing up, who was a critic for ABC, and going to junkets and interviews with my dad, helping him do research, being on set with him when Robin Williams or Jamie Foxx or whomever would come to the studio for an interview. So I kind of just, you know, grew up around it and immersed in it a little bit. But, you know, I was, I think 24, 25 when I first really hit as like, okay, this is my job. This is my career. This is what I want to do with my life. I had worked in the mailroom at William Morris in high school. I'd managed hip hop artists coming out of college. But in terms of just working and being in the business, I was 24, 25 when I moved to LA. I think that was the answer to your question. Sorry, I'm just seeing all these funny comments coming in here.
Yeah, of course. No, that was answered correctly.
How about you? How'd you get your start? What was the first sort of thing you did in the business that was like, oh, I want to actually work in this and not just cover it or not just enjoy watching it?
Right. I think as a kid, I've always kind of like when I remember being on the bus and listening to like music, and I would always envision that I was like shooting a music video or I was like in a music video. So ever since I was a kid, I've always kind of like been in that mindset of wanting to do it. But it wasn't until a few years ago when we like really took it seriously. But me and Danny have been doing it for like since grade 7 or 8. We were shooting for fun back then, right? Yeah. But now it's a lot more than then.
But that's dope. I mean, I got my start in music videos too, producing them out of college and working on them with my friends, and that taught me so much about the business and creativity and how to work with a budget and just all the things. So yeah, I have a lot of fond memories from the music video world myself.
Yeah, that's amazing. A really cool question I had for you is, you're in such a good place right now where, you know, from reading your bio, it looks like you've really made it like in the industry. Can you talk about how you would make connections if you were to restart your career? If you were to go back to the beginning, what would you do, you know, to get back to the same place?
Well, I don't know if there's anything I would change or switch up when it comes to connecting with people. I think it's such an integral part of the business and something I kind of pride myself on, you know, is the understanding that relationships open a lot of doors, not only for yourself, but you have the power to do that for other people. I maybe would go back and you know, try to work even more with sort of mentoring the next generation. I try to do that, but it feels a little fragmented. I'd love to maybe start some type of formal program, you know, but I would always, when I was on set at the E! Channel, I'd always bring in film students from high school or college and just try to, you know, I always had a rule too. If you hit me up on Instagram or Twitter and took me out to lunch in LA, you paid for it. I'll sit there and try and help you out with your life and career. So when it comes to connecting with people, it's such a vital part of my hustle, of the industry of making movies, of telling stories. It's so collaborative. You need to know people. The most successful people in this business seem to know everybody and have crossed paths with everybody. And I think during this time too of isolation, when we're, you know, not going to film festivals or being on large sets or, you know, in the office with lots of people, it's really important to connect, do stuff like this, find time out of the day to have a Zoom with an old buddy from high school or to, you know, check in, even if it's not work related, just to check in with friends and family, just that human connection. We can feel a lot closer to people because we see their timeline and like their photos. But, you know, going back, I was very fortunate when I was coming up in the game that social media wasn't around. And so you had to go out there and press the flesh and see people and connect. So right. I've always really enjoyed the people aspect of production and working, which makes doing these Zoom interviews from home so tough because it was always so fun being on set and having a camera person, an audio team, you know, all the people that go into the process of making content and television.
Right.
Yeah, the landscape has definitely changed a lot. And I'm actually kind of curious to know, because obviously, you grew up in a different time where networking was a completely different landscape, right? A lot of it is digital now. People are leveraging their social media platforms and, this and that to make connections. I wanted to know, like, during your search or during your, journey to success and connecting with people, what was something that you thought helped you stand out? Because I'm sure it was a heavily saturated field, right? Like, you're competing with people who probably have had a little bit more experience than you, and you were a fresh up and comer coming out of the mailroom. Like, how did you compete in that field? Were you anxious? Like, can we talk a little bit about your struggles,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think just having a genuine appreciation and wide-eyed enthusiasm helped me stand out in an industry that is often jaded and entitled and, quote, over it, so to speak. I still, to this day, again, having grown up in it, having done it now for a long time, still get excited. I get excited to be on set. I get excited at premiere. I get excited going to a film festival. I covered Sundance now for 16 years in a row, this first year remotely. But catch me Friday night at the Echoes and I have a smile on my face and I feel, invigorated. And I think too often in whatever it is that is your field, whether you're in the culinary arts, you're in the medical profession, finance, whatever, there becomes kind of a routine that can weigh on you. And I've been fortunate to kind of not have a traditional routine where every day isn't the same. There are new challenges that keeps it exciting. So I think that was so important back then. And doing my homework. I was shocked at how many times people will go do a big time interview with someone and they hadn't seen the movie. They hadn't read the book. They hadn't watched their previous 3 films, and I was really, really determined to prove that I belong because I was younger, because I had a name that people assumed, got me the job or whatever it was. I really wanted to be on my P's and Q's and know what I was talking about. So I think that helped me stand out early on, was having seen the films, having been at the events, having really pounded the pavement and putting in that work, So I pride myself on those early days, finding my footing in my own career. Because it was just sort of, like hard work, preparation, and appreciation. And that was sort of the cocktail for me.
That sounds amazing. It sounds like you were just extremely passionate about what you were doing, and that passion drove you to, find out more about the people you were talking to and the industry you were in.
Being cast to Harry Potter, like who am I to do that? That's not a job. You know what I mean? You get to fly to Egypt. I went to Israel with Rihanna when I worked at the E! Channel. Like I've had some wild, funny experiences and stories that I'll be able to share with my grandkids hopefully one day. So yeah, it never felt like a job. It felt like going to Hollywood high school a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Honestly, like from people who aren't as obviously involved in the film industry, it almost sounds like you're like having a party. It sounds like your whole entire career so far.
It was a boondoggle back then. Movie promotions changed dramatically. Without social media, you can do things a little bit more cost effective if you're a studio or an independent film even. But I think there is something celebratory about the release of cinema. And that has a party atmosphere to it. That's why when a movie goes on the awards train, there's lots of parties and get-togethers in the pre-COVID times. And just the making of a movie is such a daunting task and accomplishment. So then the release of it becomes a celebration of that accomplishment. And as press, you're often complicit, or you want to be supportive of that or understand the process that led to that jubilation. So yeah, you're absolutely right. There is like a party vibe to the rollout of a movie in some ways.
Yeah, basically the culture. You actually touched upon a lot of points that I think would be really valuable for people who might not be as familiar with the film industry, because producing has so many different hats that you have to wear. But I felt like just in that one paragraph you gave me, like you touched upon so many things when it comes to like the behind the scenes of, developing and creating a movie. Can you talk a little bit about the struggles of a producer? Like what are the day ins and day outs, like the stuff that give you headaches, the stuff that, make your job difficult, but at the same time so enjoyable?
Well, one, I am by no means the be-all, end-all expert on all things producing in Hollywood, but what I have learned in my short time from covering it and now producing myself is that a great producer is able to really drive that creative vision home, support those who have it and are able to put out fires where they need to be put out, while keeping everyone's spirits, moving in the right direction and keeping everyone's energy in a high place. It's a people business. It's a relationship business. I think there's certain areas of the filmmaking process where certain producers have strengths, whether that's in the financing or the casting or the development of an idea or what have you, the raising of money. So I think, for myself, I really love the part of the process of working with the creatives to help put a project together, to learn about a project. It's so important to become an expert on whatever it is you're out there trying to put together. But I think, to answer your question, what drives a producer nuts maybe, or something that keeps him up at night, him or her, is that, everybody else gets an Oscar except there's no best producer. It's best picture. The producer goes up there often and accepts it, but it's best director, best makeup, best, lighting, but everything, right? It's everything but the producer, cinematography, what have you. So I think that is kind of it's almost like an offensive lineman in football. It's like finding those statistics. We all know how many yards somebody can run for, how many they can throw for, but how do you quantify how they really guarded the pocket? It's a different type of metric. So certain producers have that kind of je ne sais quoi, where they're able to just bring it all together, make sense in the room, and make the magic happen. But it comes down to relationships, and I think it comes down to transparency and trust, and that's really it. In a shady business, a people's business that is often with inflated egos or heightened expectations, unrealistic expectations, I think the producer who's able to kind of puppeteer and manage all of that while getting to the finish line is the one who's going to be the most successful.
Those are really, really good points for sure. I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about, because you seem like a very optimistic guy. It sounds like everything that makes you who you are is what you do, right? Like you're a people's person, you're good at talking, good at helping creatives, create their vision, like you're a people's person.
Thanks,
And
checks in the mail. Yeah, let's go.
Just keep the compliments going, I wanted to know, like, because there's going to be a lot of people who are starting in the field. Like our goal as in Filmmakers Uncut is to give people value who might not be doing the best in their field but want to get better, right? And you're optimistic. I feel like if you came across a situation where your back was against the wall and you had to come up with a solution, you would have the mindset and personality to do the double time, do the triple time, and make things happen. But what if you were in a situation where maybe you were on a project where you weren't fully passionate about? You have been lucky enough to kind of had, family and friends who have been in the industry and kind of give you a push maybe into what you want to do. But there's going to be a lot of people who don't have those connections, maybe coming out of school because school was the only, outlet that they had into the film world. And maybe they're jumping on projects right now that they're not fully excited about, but they know they need to do to jumpstart their career. Have you been in those positions where you're working on a project that you're not fully passionate about, but you still have to give it your all? How do you do that in that atmosphere?
Absolutely. No, there's definitely been times where I have had a job that I've taken on where it's, for money reasons or reasons to get to the next job, or, real life gets in the way and you make decisions. You got to figure out your path. And I understand that I've been lucky and privileged in so many ways in life outside of just the business of making movies and covering them and all these things. I've found that when you have a job or you have something you're working on where your heart's not entirely in it, but it's a means to an end, or it's what you need to do to sustain a certain life for yourself, you have to be proactive in finding the pockets of the day that are just for you. And then additionally, proactive in finding those pockets that are just for your passion. So if you have a job that has you, doing something that you're just not mentally connected to, but you're able to earn a living or you're able to make a means to an end, whether it's on the way to that job, whether it's when you get home, whether it's waking up 10 minutes earlier and journaling, whether it's, staying up 10 minutes later and meditating, finding the pockets within the day that are just for you is the first step. If you're in some kind of job that isn't, ideal when you want to be doing something else. And I think this is like a valuable lesson I learned from a very wise man named Channing Frye, who played for the New York Knicks. Shout out to Channing Frye and Chosen Family Wine. He said, closed mouths don't get fed. We were all driving once from the hotel at Turner, and we were all staying at the Lowe's, and he was staying at the Four Seasons, and we picked him up, and Gary Payton was like, yo, why are you staying at the Four Seasons, dog? And he said, hey, closed mouths don't get fed. I asked, and they put me up here. So when you're out there hustling your passion, what it is you're into and selling, you got to ask for stuff. You got to reach out. You got to write a letter to someone asking to be on set for a job. You got to proactively engage with the world to change your situation, or else it's not going to happen. So to answer your question, what can you proactively do? I think it's finding those small pockets of the day. Because if you go, oh my God, I want to make a movie, but I'm working at McDonald's. How am I going to make a movie? It's going to take a whole year. Can you find 5 minutes a day to write that script? Can you find 5 minutes a day to email that script to somebody? Can you get the train leaving the station 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, and then it takes over your life, and that's the goal, right? So I think that would be my advice, is just to try to find those moments that are for you, and don't be afraid to ask for the moon. You might get the stars back. Who knows?
100%. Yeah. Being proactive, even in a time where you're like struggling, I think that is so important. It's almost like, an entrepreneurial spirit. At the end of the day, like, you are technically running your own business. Like, as a producer, you're finding talent, you're finding this and that. If you're a cinematographer, like, you're finding jobs, you're marketing yourself. It is an entrepreneurial spirit at the end of the day where you're like trying to.
I remember interviewing Morgan Freeman for, I want to say it was like Invictus maybe, and asking him about the job and how it came together. And, and he said, well, it was just that. It was a job. That's why I'm like, yo, what do you mean you took a job? He's like, yo, I don't get offered everything all the time. And you're like, okay, but there's a kind of a craftsman-like mentality to those working actors where you go from job to job, and you don't know where your next job's coming, even if you are this, immense talent. So yeah, there is definitely an entrepreneurial spirit that comes to a lot of different facets of the filmmaking process, for sure.
I think it's I think because we have you, it would be almost a missed opportunity if we didn't talk about some of the people that you had an opportunity to interview. Were there any interviews or moments in your career that, like, opened your eyes to what you wanted to do? Like, any interviews that, like, just struck a nerve?
I mean, when you get to interview the real life people who some of these stories are based on, that can be a powerful experience. I got to do a set visit on the film Rush, the Formula One movie that Ron Howard directed. And then when the movie premiered at Toronto, the character that Daniel Bruhl plays in that film, Niki Lauda, was doing press, and I got to spend some time with him and talk to him. And this is someone who survived a horrific crash, and it's portrayed in the film, and has noticeable burn marks, but was in the later stages of his life at the time. And that one really kind of like got me. It's an icon of the sport and the real life person. When you see these movie stars, often they're on their best behavior. So, sometimes I enjoy, while the ones who are incredibly gracious and charismatic and can really own the moment, I almost enjoy seeing the nerves of these larger than life figures that we see on screen come out, being backstage at the Oscars and Matt Damon walking off the stage being like, oh my God, that was so intense. Like, he just gave out best documentary, I think, for The Cove that year. And it was like, Clooney's coming up, talk shit in the front row, and I'm freaking out and I'm sweating, and oh my God. And he's just like a normal dude, you know what I mean? It's Jason Bourne. And it's like, that guy's been flustered when he's been fighting terrorism around the world, but when he's on the stage at the Oscars, he's freaking out. It was a joy to see Kobe Bryant the year at the Academy Awards when he won the Oscar, and he was backstage like, oh my God, this happened. And to see that guy who so often is so intense and ferocious, to see him light up, like, when you find the humanity in the craziness of it all, those are the pockets that I are really like, struck by. Or when somebody gets out of a car at a premiere and there's fans waiting for them or screaming, and they come up to you and they're like, yo, this is a lot. Like, this is not a normal day for me. I know I'm Channing Tatum this is crazy. So like, I like seeing that stuff and having access.
Yeah, seeing the human in these idols that people like, put them on a pedestal, and you just get to see their real human side. It must be kind of surreal, like watching those movies and then meeting them in person, and they're just like, a regular person like you and me. I think that's awesome. You must miss that a lot too, because, I'm sure since the start of COVID for you, things have kind of been a little bit slower. Can we talk a little bit about COVID and how it's affected you as a producer and your field and, your industry in general? Like, I'm sure you were so busy and things kind of slowed down a bit. What are the changes that you've been experiencing? Are you excited for anything now that, restrictions are starting to be lifted and stuff like that?
Yeah, it's crazy. The top of 2020 was amazing. Like, I went to Sundance with Josh Horowitz from MTV News. We launched a podcast series for the first time. Again, it was at the time, my 15th Sundance. So I know the place inside and out. And we did a lot of great interviews, saw some wonderful films. I covered the Oscars for ABC with Stephen A. Smith and Maria Menounos. Got to do that, which was a thrill. And again, really fun to feel comfortable in this sort of uncomfortable environment. It was like my 13th or 14th Oscars. So things are rolling. I did a game show for NBA TV, went to the Mammoth Film Festival. So I'm out there, I'm having a blast. And then boom, obviously the world shuts down and things got so serious and so crazy so fast. So like a lot of us, I was in shock and tried to sort of just batten down the hatches and internalize what was happening, support my wife through the process. She started writing a book at the top of the pandemic, which then was released in October. So that was a huge, undertaking for her. So it was amazing to see that happen. But yeah, doing interviews via Zoom, film festivals kind of going out the window or pivoting remotely and covering movies over my computer was definitely different. And now as a producer, it's been a time to really go back and make sure that all your ducks are in order. I think this is a wonderful time to kind of hibernate and create and make sure your rights are intact. You have the option. You have the writer on board. The deck is exactly where you want it to be. You have the creative partners in place. So just kind of like loading up the treasure chest, if you will. I know you have my buddy Sean Carey on last week, which I really enjoyed watching. And we work on a bunch of projects together. And now in this time, it's been okay, let's get everything in order. And as we begin to take these out, the world will be back open again. And the timing's worked out good in that respect. I've done a tremendous amount of writing. I got to contribute to Slam Magazine and Golf Digest. Those are bucket list things for me as a sports fan and a fan of those brands. So it's been a combination of pivoting, internalizing, and really focusing on what it is I want to do and what I want to contribute. I pride myself on going to these festivals and events every year, but if they look different, if they don't come back, or if they come back in different ways, it's okay to take on a new challenge. I think it's so easy to get on the hamster wheel, especially in the news media business or in that part of my career. The idea of, I got to be at Sundance every year. I got to be at South by every year. I got to be at Tribeca every year. After a while, it kind of becomes interchangeable. And it's not to say that you're over it, but it's to say, okay, is this really where the story is? Is this really where the energy is? Is this really where culture is happening and new talent is coming from? So, for every time you get to cover something again, and that's amazing, I'm always looking for, okay, this year I was actually doing this instead, or I'm working on that, or I'm touching it in a new way, or, I hope to come back here with one of our films, or, there's just a different way to do it. So you're not just always on the hamster wheel, if you will.
Yeah, that's really awesome. One thing I wanted to touch upon or kind of stem off of what you were mentioning is how you were affected by COVID, but regardless, like you found what was important to be focused on during that time. Like you weren't taking a break. I think there's a bit of the stigma, at least in the Toronto filmmaker industry anyways, that we're all struggling and big productions aren't happening. So everyone's kind of taking a break and using that time to like refresh themselves. But you're talking about, going back into the internal operations of yourself and your company and what makes you run and like figuring out how to expand and grow once this is all over. I think that's a super important thing that you're doing that everyone can learn from.
Thanks, man. I hope it works out. We'll see. I don't know. I think everybody's just trying to get through it any way they can. For me, it's been really hard. It's been really challenging as a people person who loves, I wish we were doing this in a studio right now, and I wish that, I was able to, start to put together my South by schedule or Tribeca schedule this time of year. But those things are going to look a lot different, So I think understanding that, it is a time to reflect and to slow down and to quiet the noise a little bit, but you got to keep going. You got to keep finding ways to generate not only income and things like that, but also passion in your life and things that you're creatively proud of and connections you want to make.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. And I think an important point there too was like, I see you're very adaptable, right? Being adaptable to the situation, not always something happening and you're reacting, but instead you're adapting and seeing, hey, what can we do here to change things up a little bit? How can we move this in a more positive direction, which obviously comes from your enthusiasm and positive mindset in that sense.
Yeah, and part of me that's like, I want to pivot 180 degrees and go be a high school basketball coach, or I want to pivot and go move to Napa Valley and work at a vineyard. Like there's parts of me that is considering that in ways at times, because you do get frustrated with the stagnant process of where things are at right now and how the world has kind of changed and things are cut back and scaled back. And it's a lot. But I think the pivot comes and the adapting comes from understanding the business, the marketplace, where people are at right now, the needs. I'm not going to go pitch a show right now that's going to cost a certain amount because this network maybe just got hit with a tough financial year and they're looking to do stuff at a cost or whatever it is, trying to take like a bird's eye view and not just be caught in my own hamster wheel and rat race, I think is a healthy way to approach this whole thing.
Right. That makes sense. A question we had for you is you were talking a lot about hosting panels and judging films in the past as well. When you're judging these films at the festivals, what are you usually looking for? Like, how do you make that decision? Because I know we have a lot of filmmakers on here who soon enough, I'm sure, will be visiting these Sundance and all the other places. And I just want them to learn more about, what's your thought process behind that?
Yeah, look, I understand I'm very privileged and have a great responsibility in that I'm sharing my opinion on a large platform about somebody else's work and vision. But what I look for in that experience is real simple. It's just honesty and authenticity. If you're trying to be a scary movie, I want to be scared shitless. If it's a romantic film, I want to think about my wife. Like it's pretty simple at the end of the day. Oftentimes I feel like films can, especially with filmmakers early on in their career, because it's been a lifetime culmination of their work to get to the screen, that they pack everything into a movie. And then it can be dishonest or create kind of some falsehoods or some inconsistencies, I think, in the experience. And so for me, it doesn't matter what your budget is. It doesn't matter what the story it is that you're trying to tell. Are you doing it from a place of authenticity? Is it genuine? Does it feel, not even if it's a fantasy, does it feel real in what it's trying to accomplish? And is its intentions pure? Is it just a money play for the actors, for the studio? Again, kind of knowing what's going on behind the business, I think, is important. Why certain actors get cast in movies. They're having a moment. They were hot on this TV show. Okay, that's why the studio put them in here. Like, does that impact the art? My dad in his approach to film has never really thought of himself as part of the Hollywood machine. He's always approached it more as a journalist and a news reporter whose beat is Hollywood, covering films. And I've kind of reverse engineer it. Like, I enjoy being on the inside of the matrix, understanding, okay, this is why it's sold. It appealed to this audience. It's got this writer who's coming off of this, all that stuff. But then when you're actually watching the film on screen, is it honest in what it's trying to say about the world? When people ask me all the time, what is it that makes a best picture when you're voting for the Critics' Choice or you're covering the Oscars or something? And I say, does it change the way that I look at the world in my own life? And does it change the way I look at the craft of filmmaking and the business of putting a film together? And oftentimes, a movie like Parasite checks both those boxes. I look at the world a little differently after seeing that film. And then also the techniques it used in the storytelling, I thought were incredibly inventive and unique. So, I think that's a good kind of approach is, are you being honest? Are you being authentic? And does it kind of change the way I look at the world and my own life and my own place in it and, the business of making movies?
What a great answer. That is just such a great answer. I think so many people are going to get just so much value from that, because you're so right. Like, as filmmakers, when you're producing something, like, there's a lot of ego in there. You're trying to prove something, trying to create something that you want to move people. But at the end of the day, if your final product doesn't feel what you're trying to make people feel, I think you probably did miss the mark. And I think you had such an elegant way of describing that, and the amount of detail you gave in that answer. Yeah.
I've had friends and filmmakers who have come up to me after I maybe said something or tweeted something and were hurt by that, and I have to own that. I think there's, a great humility that comes with, giving a negative review. And I far often would, more enjoy the experience of finding something tiny and standing up in my chair and being like, yo, this is the one, this is the shit, this is the one to watch, as opposed to pontificating about how terrible something it is only to fuel my own sense of importance or something. So, at the end of the day, you got to think twice before you shit on somebody else's work. And I have spoken negatively about films, and I've had to own that, and I will continue to do so. So I think, it's definitely something I grapple with, and I've probably done a better job with it as I get older. I wish almost in certain ways that I could go back and review a lot of those movies I watched through 25, 26, 27-year-old goggles, as opposed to how old I am now as a 39-year-old who's married and has a different life perspective. I'm sure my opinions would probably change, good or bad, about some of those titles from 10, 15 years ago.
Very interesting. I think that would be a good article you can put out as well, like 25 years later,
Yes, I should go back. That's actually a really good idea. I might steal that. Yeah, I'll give you 2 tickets to the premiere and say thanks in the credits. All right, how about that?
Deal. I'm down. Let's do it. Right on. I think as a filmmaker, a lot of people are thinking, hey, how do you get into these film festivals? If you had a film, I'm not sure if you guys had a film that been in the film festival. How do you guys go about getting it into there?
Well, I think there's obviously the submission process, which each film festival has laid out for itself. But then again, it comes down to relationships and networking. If you can work with a sales agent to represent your film as you're trying to sell it, again, understanding what's your intention for being at the film festival is first and foremost. Are you going to that festival to try to get a sale for the movie itself? Are you going to that festival to try to bring awareness to your next project? Are you going to that festival just to reward the filmmakers and the cast and the crew and everybody who worked hard on it to celebrate and have a great experience? And there's value in that too. Certain film festivals are known, obviously, for places that are trying to sell films and content. Others are more to bring local businesses, money during the off season or what have you. So kind of having a strategy first and foremost of what you need, what you want, what you hope to get out of the film festival experience. And each film festival offers something differently, I think is really important. Don't just blanket your film to 20 of the top festivals. Like, understand how, and then almost play this out. Like, I equate it to when we were in high school and we were applying to colleges. A college guidance counselor would say, hey, if you're going to try to go to a college out of state, and when you're actually a student there, you're going to have to take the bus. Don't fly there on your visit. You fly there on your visit, you're going to love it. But then when you're actually going to school there and taking an 8-hour bus ride each way, it's going to impact and change the experience. So the idea of, I'm going to apply to all these festivals. Well, if you can't go to that festival and support the film while you're there, is it worth it? Do you need to do that? Do you have to go to every festival? Can you just submit the film to one, and can your lead actor go to it because they live in that town and it'll cost you $500 in a plane ticket? You know what I mean? Like, really map it out and be strategic in the approach to each one so you can get value out of it. Then begin connecting with these festivals all year long. Join their newsletters. Sign up for the Q&As with their program directors. Follow their program directors on social media. When they do satellite programming in your city, attend. Volunteer at the festivals. Volunteering is a great way to sort of get ingratiated to the ecosystem of each festival. You know, there are different players in each one, and learn the sponsor. You know, there's a lot of different ways to kind of approach it. But I would think my first one, so not to ramble any much longer, would be like, go to each one a la carte, and don't just say, I've got a movie and I'm sending it everywhere. That can be too overwhelming. But say, okay, if I get into this one, how are we going to go support it? What are we hoping to get out of it? Will that mean we can't get into this one? If we premiere at that one, this one might not want us. So it's a strategy that is very important. But I think when you go into it with intention and realistic expectations, and don't just spend, you know, $75 in a submission fee 100 times, like that's not going to do you any good.
Right. That makes sense. And I really like your little tips in the middle there of like what to do. And it almost sounds like branding yourself and getting yourself out there to these festivals, so they start to recognize your name in that sense, right? The same thing as like marketing yourself.
Touch the festivals. You oftentimes at Sundance will see the programmer come up on stage and say, hey, this person's been part of our family for a long time, and now it's their feature film debut, or, you know, and whether it's writing programs, grants, fellowships, short films, there's a lot of entry points, especially to the larger ones. You know, if your film is of merit and you know, and of a certain quality, like you'll submit it to some of the regional ones or the secondary places, and chances are you'll probably get accepted. But for the most part, when you're looking at those real premier festivals, there are a lot of entry points that you can start to and go through before, you know, it's time for your film to step up to the plate. So they are tracking films for a while before they get submitted. You know, now it's big business. Now a lot of films come to these festivals already with distribution baked in. But you can show, if you can show that there's an audience and an appetite for your movie, I think it's really helpful and beneficial. You know, if you say, hey, we want to apply to your film festival, and this movie has 20,000 followers on Instagram who are all excited for its release, they're going to come support the movie. That's something you can put in your toolbox as well. So I think that there are a lot of proactive things filmmakers can do besides simply just sending your movie in the mail and just hoping it's 12 out of 20,000 that get picked.
Right. And I had a question about, you know, I think a lot of people think making it into a film festival means your film's going to like make it out there in that sense. Do you think, you know, getting into a festival like Sundance, for example, does it mean your film is going to make it?
Depends what making it means. You know, I think for some people, just getting on that stage is the win. Getting out there, getting their name in the trades in a real way. If they don't sell it at Sundance, maybe it gives them the momentum to go sell it somewhere else. Maybe it gives them a job as a commercial director. Maybe there's so much that maybe they do a brand deal that pays for everybody to have a kick-ass weekend, and that's the end of it. Like there's, you know, who knows? I mean, I've seen movies at Sundance. I saw My Idiot Brother, star-studded cast, Paul Rudd, Rashida Jones, always was sold for $20 million. The movie came and went. But then you have a movie like Fruitvale Station that, you know, launches the career of MBJ and Coogler and is one of the seminal works of the decade. And did that movie garner tremendous box office? No. Is it a successful endeavor? Absolutely. You know, and is it an important film that generations of film fans will come to discover? 100%. So I don't know. I mean, every movie has its weird, different path, different journey. It's really cool now to see Carey Mulligan, for example, and Promising Young Woman in the conversation for awards, because that movie played at Sundance 2020. So it's already 14 months later of feeling it bubble within the culture to its apex if you time it right. There's a real art to the awards campaign, and that's something I've learned to appreciate in my time covering it as a journalist, making movies that I hope to be considered for awards myself. I think there's a real craft to the campaign, and you know, film festivals are an integral part of that. So you know, if you do make it to Sundance, yeah, your movie makes it in certain ways, but then there's a whole other conversation. There's levels to it.
Right. Seems like the doors of opportunity are opening in that sense, right?
Well, the doors of opportunity, especially at a festival like that, are wide open, because I remember you'd go in like 06, 07, 08, and if Harvey didn't buy it, if Fox Searchlight didn't buy it, it didn't go. Like now with the streaming platforms, with so many more outlets looking for content, these films have a life, not only for features, but for short films as well. I remember I always go see shorts at Sundance, and then you couldn't find them. Like, it was impossible. And now there's a great organization called Holly Shorts. They're an Oscar qualifying short film festival in LA that any short filmmaker who's still listening or watching at this point should definitely check out. And they provide a life for these films all year long. And they have a whole database where you can go and watch them, and a platform and all the things. So I think there are more opportunities now than ever coming out of film festivals for a movie to actually have a shot of getting some eyeballs.
Right. And we're consuming so much more content than we used to as well. Usually with COVID going on.
This is a film podcast, so I can talk about it. And I hope, again, anybody still listening or watching at this point, this doesn't apply to you. But there's nothing worse than when you run into someone and you're talking about what you're watching or what films are out, and someone says, yeah, I'm in the middle of One Night in Miami. It's really good. You're like, what? What do you mean? It's a movie. You watch it in one sitting. But people now are so fragmented in their content consumption that they'll watch 20 seconds on Instagram, 5 minutes listening of a podcast while they're parking their car, whatever it is. It's like, start it and finish it without stopping. What's the big deal? Oh, well, it's too much for me. I gave it a break. Or, yeah, I'm watching Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. We started it last night. It's really good. What? That drives me nuts. So as much as there's, all this different content we're consuming and ways that we're consuming it, you start a movie, you stop it when it's over. Can we all agree to that, please?
Yep, agreed. I had a personal question on my end. I know you've been on Entourage. I've watched Entourage a couple times, and now I'm rewatching it with my girlfriend.
Nice.
I'd love to know what you were on there for, and what season and episode we can catch you on.
I'm at the premiere of The Great Gatsby. I had the very difficult challenge of interviewing Vincent Chase on the red carpet, only to be interrupted by Ari Gold, who promises me we'll catch up with him later. But I know those guys for a long time, covering the show, play golf with Jerry, play pickup basketball with Jerry. Kevin Connolly's a great dude. I did the Sundance podcast for his new platform this year. So Entourage was sort of always around in 06, 07, 08, 09, LA. They were out in the clubs, they were shooting, and Doug Ellen is a big Knicks fan and wrote me into the show. And it was outside the Grauman's Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, an all-night shoot. And Vince got the movie, got the Gatsby, and I was on the red carpet. There you go, touch the culture. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, that's amazing. I've listened to a bit of the podcast there, and I know whoever was on it has really enjoyed their experience being on that show. Because usually you're acting as yourself on there, right? Which most of the time, like in any show, you're not really acting as yourself. So it's a really cool opportunity to be there as, you.
But there was like a real family vibe on that show. And again, it was a time where you didn't have social media to promote shows, so casts would do a lot more press. There'd be set visits, there'd be TCAs and, Comic-Cons and, all these types of places where you would do press. And man, I mean, Piven and Jerry and Kevin and those guys were everywhere, like all over the place. So we did a lot of stuff over the years. Jamie Lynn Sigler is a dear friend. I got a lot of love for those Entourage folks. Emmanuel Shariki is one of the kindest people in LA. It was always fun on set. The show's not of real serious subject matter. I know Vinny was on drugs there for a minute with Sasha Grey. Like, it got a little crazy, but it's not like you're doing a set visit on The Changeling. So anytime you were around, it was always fun and upbeat. But yeah, I don't know if it holds up though. The test of time. Is your girl enjoying it? You guys having fun with it?
Yeah, she's having a good time. I think she mostly watches it because I like it in that sense. I don't think she would watch it alone. But it is a great show. I've always loved it, and it's such a good vibe. The whole show is such a good vibe.
I'm like, yo, why is there always a pool party going on at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday? You guys could always like leave lunch and be like, should we go work? Nah, let's go in the hills to some like crazy house. Who are all these people? Nobody works.
Yeah, for real. That's hilarious. Aside from that, Dane, do you have any questions before we wrap it up here?
I don't have any personal questions. We're just gonna flip through Instagram really quickly to see if any of the people who joined the live stream left some questions, and apparently they did not. I guess. I mean, your answers were typically so detailed and gave so much information. It's kind of hard
That's what it is. Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Well, I don't have any personal questions. I just want to say thank you for hopping on and providing so much insight and detail into the mind of a producer who is clearly very successful in your field. You're an incredible speaker. Thank you so much for hopping on. Poi, do you want to say anything to Ben?
No, thank you. We really appreciate your time, Ben, and we hope to connect with you soon again and have you on here. You were amazing, super optimistic, my dude. Yeah, we had a great time.
Can't wait to see you on TV.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks for having this platform for filmmakers to come share their unique stories, perspective. We need creative voices now more than ever. So if I can support them on air as a host or behind the scenes as a producer, love to do it. So thanks for having me, and I hope to see you guys in the 6 soon. Be well. All right.
You too.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah. And does anyone ever tell you look exactly like Pau Gasol?
Who? Palso? Okay. That's awesome. I'll check him out.